For this series is Ephesians 4:29. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to use to edify, and that may minister grace unto the hearers. That is our base scripture for this lesson. Please remember that these sayings you have to keep in your spirit and in your heart. The worst distance between two people is misunderstanding. And that's one thing while we are working with this series. We want to eliminate misunderstanding by being better communicators, talking more, communicating more. Also remember this, when people talk, when people communicate with you, please keep this in your mind and in your heart. When someone else is speaking, practice getting out of your head and into their heart. So please, let's remember those sayings. A couple more sayings. Remember, with this lesson, you cannot communicate. We are always communicating. We're always communicating. Remember that. We're communicating through verbal, nonverbal, even our behavior is a form of communication. We're always communicating. We're always communicating. So you have to be careful what you say, what you do, because it is a form of communication. And also, please remember this, in communicating, you can't take back what you communicate. Once it's been put out there into the universe, the atmosphere, the environment, you cannot take it back. So as we said before, we want to be wise. We want to make sure that we have thought about it. We don't want to do as many times what I have done is run the light, run the stop sign. We want to make sure we think before we speak. We consider the end of the conversation. We make sure of that. So remember that you can't take back what you have communicated. Once it leaves your mouth, the best thing you can do is apologize, dress it up, do something with it, but you cannot take it back. So you got to be careful what you communicate. Last week we touched briefly on, and we did not do justice with it. So we want to go over it again, and then we're going to do another area, and that will be all for tonight. Communicating through the noise. We said that last week. We touched on it too fast, and we want to make sure we deal with it again. Communicating through the noise. Noise is a sound, especially one that is loud or unpleasant, or that causes disturbance. One thing we have to be very careful of is when we communicate, we got to make sure if you say you need to talk to your wife, you need to talk to your son, you need to talk to the boss. When you communicate, you want to make sure that you get the noise or the distractions away. One of the things that's already going to be a challenge when you talk to somebody is just the conversation itself. Remember, as we said, we need to talk. We don't like hearing those words most of the time, or that phrase, we need to talk. But we also got to remember is that we have to get the distractions out the way, and you definitely don't want distractions anytime you communicate, but definitely if it's a serious, sensitive matter, that's the last thing you want is a distraction while you're trying to communicate something serious. It's just like someone that would want to propose to somebody. You don't want somebody interrupting you with your proposal every other word. It's not going to have the same flow. It's not going to have the same love of the energy. And some people are like, yes, please distract me because I might not want to do it, but I'm not talking like that. But let me remind you is that we have to get the distractions out of the way when we communicate. Listen to this, just as loud noises can drown out a speaker's voice, intellectual noise can keep people from hearing. Understand that people do not benefit from a sermon or content that is over their heads or insulting. One thing we have to learn how to do, not only a pastor, a preacher, a speaker, one thing we also got to learn that we have to do is when we communicate with people, we have to learn not to have intellectual noise. In other words, just because you know more than that person on that subject, just because you might have some degrees, some education, you don't want to have intellectual noise in communicating. And when you do communicate, sometimes, as we said before, for some people, as somebody mentioned in our segment earlier, there's some people that like using big words, but they really ain't saying too much of anything. You don't want to be one of those people that do intellectual noise in communicating. Listen, people will not benefit from a sermon content if it's over their heads or it's an insult to their intelligence. Let us be mindful. Let us remember that when we communicate with people, we talk to people, that we don't want to be talking over their heads or insulting them while we communicate. How are you going to say we need to talk and the second phrase, third sentence out of your mouth is an insult to me, and you say we need to talk. Let's be mindful, as we have said over and over during our rehab sessions, we have to remember this. People treat you how you allow them to treat you. And we have to learn to draw lines in the sand. We can communicate, we can talk, but we should not be disrespecting one another when it comes to sharing info. Now, there's plenty of us that have the joking relationship, the laugh, and things of that nature. But I can promise you, when somebody tells you we need to talk based on their tone, based on their body language, you know it's a serious matter. So we have to make sure that we should not be insulting people's intelligence when we're communicating. Same way when somebody is speaking or preaching, they should not be speaking over the head of their audience. Okay, we have to remember that even for anybody, even though those are not standing up here, those that do, you have to remember what's very important when you're talking to people, know your audience. There are times, and I'm being honest, me and my wife have conversations and things of that nature, and there are times where the jokes are real borderline. Me and my wife can joke a certain way about a topic, but another couple might not be able to joke in that lane or that vein, because it could be a sensitive matter. It could be a matter that's not, we joke about it, but it's something they can't joke about. So we have to be careful and know our audience. Always remember that. Speakers offend the listeners, speakers can offend the listeners when there is insensitivities to culture, insensitivity to education, to differences and things. One of the things we have to learn is that we have to learn and respect our differences with one another. One of the things I've come to learn is I'm not here to change how the Lord made somebody. I'm here to accept the personality the Lord gave them and how they made it so we can grow together. I'm not here to change how the Lord made somebody. I want to accept how the Lord made you. We work on our character. We work on our integrity. But the Lord made you funny and laid back. We need that. The ministry needs that. The body of Christ needs that. So I'm not here to insult how the Lord made you. I'm not here to insult your culture or where you grew up or what you've been exposed to. We should not be doing that when we communicate. How quick do you turn somebody off if they're insulting every other thing that you do? They're insulting your hair, your clothes, how you talk, what you do. That's not wise when you want to communicate with somebody. Listen to this. Other barriers that comes along with communicating through the noise is misunderstandings, learning styles, personality types, and of course, distraction. We have different personalities, all right? And we have to learn how to accept the personality that people have. Now, most of the time, you have to remember that your personality will attract others that have the same personality as you. Mm-hmm. I'm the type of person, I do like fun people. I do like people that see the lighter side, people that want to laugh, the people want to have a good time. The stuffy, so serious people where you can't make a joke at, those are really not my cup of tea. Not that I dislike them, but there's a certain personality that comes. But I also have learned the hard way that all the time is not joke time. And everything you can't make a joke out of. So I had to learn that, and I learned it the hard way. Because when I offend somebody for being lighthearted, at that time, their mindset and their heart was not there for a he, ha, ha. So we have to learn that we don't want to have those barriers or walls when we communicate. This is something I had to learn also, that we learn differently. So just because you caught on, you got it, you running with it, don't mean that the other person have caught on, they get it and they're running with it. One thing I've come to learn, very simple analogy, look at fruit. All fruit don't mature or don't ripe at the same time. Same way with us. Everybody don't catch on and get it at the same time. Now, I am concerned if the light bulb never comes on, but everybody, the light bulb doesn't come on at the same time, at the same way, because people learn differently. There's some, I do great with association. I have to associate this with that. So that's how I learn and that's how I remember, because there's a lot that goes on up in here. No, there's not 7 or 8 Rondells up in here. There's just one, but we have to remember that we learn differently, okay? Listen to this. For preachers, speakers, teachers, whoever you are that's giving a lesson or anything, they have to make sure their lesson, their sermons are specific for audiences, that it communicate the biblical messages and it's relevant. Have you ever heard somebody talk or somebody minister to you, and it seems like it's not hitting home? It seems like it's not touching base. Not to say the Lord hasn't given them a word that challenge you, but we have to understand when you are somebody that's speaking, when you're somebody that's sharing, that you want to make sure that what you're sharing touch home, touch base. It's just like someone invites you to speak at a youth conference or speak to youth, and you talk about all the things that youth don't understand. It's like talking to the young at heart, those that have some age behind them. It's like you have to learn how to relate and know your audience, and that's very important. So let me move on. This is something my father used to always say. He said, how you relate to people is very important, and that's what matters. I'm quicker to listen to somebody that knows how to approach me with respect, know how to approach me with the right tone and body language versus somebody yelling at me. Somebody yelling, hey, I need to talk to you. Okay, well, who is hey? I have a name. When you're talking to the person over there, things I need. Sir, excuse me, Rondell, hey. It's how you relate to people. And that's very important, because you yelling at me, we need to talk, ain't really going to get my attention if it's a serious matter. We have to learn that. So we have to understand is how you relate. Most of the time, you have to remember this, that most people know the truth about the situation. Some people want to co-sign. Some people want somebody to agree with their wrong. I love those people that learn how to tell me the truth and do it in love. Because what happens is many times people don't want to hear the truth about the situation. They want to be patted, sugar, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But what we have to remember is that, what are you being? Are you a person that's helping the person out? Or you're just giving them what they need to make them comfortable in a situation they should have been delivered from, a relationship they should have been left alone? We have to understand the Lord allowed people to be in our life as accountability partners. I want somebody to remind me, hey, didn't you make a covenant? Didn't you make a promise to yourself that you're going to pray more? I don't want that person in my life and say, hey, it's time for me to pray. Oh, no, you don't need to do that. Well, you in my circle, you should be encouraging me to hold fast to the word of the promise I made myself. Those are the type of people we want to make sure that we have. We have to also understand, if we are preaching, teaching, or giving a message, anytime, that you want the message to be transformative. You want to make sure when you get done speaking to somebody that we can change lives. How many times have we had a friend or somebody to call and say, hey, I'm going through this? And when the conversation was done, when they get finished talking to you, did they feel worse off or did they feel better? Did you on the phone, and I know I have one, well, on your phone, were you making faces like, jeez, were you making faces, were you really in tune with what they were saying? Because my whole thing is that definitely here, let me shift. When someone is standing in front of the rostrum, someone speaking, somebody ministering, is you have been given an opportunity to minister something to someone, to impact and to change their life. And we have to understand is that we can't take the words that we say, we can't take communicating as something, oh, well, I just said what I need to say. Do you know that our words, the life and death, is in the power of the tongue? That you want to speak words that make people think about what they're doing. We're going to just throw something out there. Some people, they cannot be the ones that talk somebody off the bridge. Because that'd be the first person and like, well, you holding up traffic, you might as well go ahead and jump. Well, wait a second. What? You can't are you one of those people that your only concern when you're communicating is you? Are you selfish with the conversation? But also we have to be wise, because some people, they don't call to get the truth. They don't call to get the right thing to do. Sometimes they call for indirect permission for the wrong thing. Some people call just to vent. They don't want a solution. They just want to unload, share it, and things like that. So you have to be careful, because you have to remember each moment, each time that we have when we communicate is very important. I can tell you now, with many of us, somebody said something to us 10, 15, 20 years ago based on our old job, and it stuck with you. It made you think about an action. It made you think. There's things that things and sayings that people had to make you say, if you don't remember too much about it. There was one saying my father used to always say, and it always stuck with me. He would say, he would say, a should be don't get any honey. It's something simple, but it's true, because how many times people say, well, it should be this. Well, almost don't count. You know what I'm saying? So we have to understand there's things that people say and communicate with that stick with us, that drives us, or the sayings that pushes us. I had one person that would tell me sayings, and when I think about them, I remember their sayings. Let me move on. So we have to understand that we have to learn how to communicate through the noise. We have to get the distractions out when we communicate. I said this last week, moving too fast. Have you ever talked to the people that you call them and they got 3 other conversations going on and trying to have a conversation with you? That drives me crazy. I have done it. I'm trying to hold a conversation. Not to say if you have to do it, do it. But I'm trying to hold a conversation and place an order and drive through. And I want my order right. So it's best just to say, hey, could you hold on for a sec? I'm in drive through. Thank you. I'm in drive through. You know what I'm saying? Well, let me call you back. Because what happens is many times somebody has said something and you missed it because you're trying to do too many things. So we want to make sure we get rid of the distractions while we're communicating. Definitely if it's all matters, but definitely a serious matter. That would really hurt my heart if I call somebody and say, I really need to talk. And they say, okay. Yeah, and they start talking back to the TV screen. And I'm pouring out my heart. I'm trying to share something dear to me. Hold on for a second. Yeah, I just let the dog back in, and then 2-3 minutes later, hold on for a second. Yeah, the pizza man just made a delivery. Hold on. I said we need to talk. Be honest with me and say, not right now. When is the best time for me to call you? So we have to learn and understand it. Understand this. When communicating, please be aware of distractions. We must practice focusing on the message and not the messenger. How many times have you been distracted during a normal conversation with somebody? Just normal. I love it. It don't offend me when I call somebody and say, hey, I can't talk right now. That's good, because I can talk and I can't ramble on. I can't go around in circles and things like that. I told you, was one of the witnesses, my wife always told me I would talk and give her information for 25 minutes. And then 2 minutes, she's like, boo, I meant to say something 20 minutes ago. And then I said, hey, why didn't you say anything? She said, well, you were talking so much, giving so much info, I couldn't get a word in. So we have to learn that when we communicate, that we got to make sure that we get the distractions out the way, that we must practice on focusing on the message. And the message has to be, not all the time, short, sweet, and to the point. Have you ever talked to somebody and the time they get done talking, you still don't know what they talking? Still don't know what you're talking about. We have to remember this. Listen to what the Bible says. Lest Satan should take advantage of us, we should not be ignorant of his devices. You have to understand is that Satan will use things to distract us. All type of things. Have you ever been in church and you was fine, and then a child, nothing wrong with a child crying, but that gets your attention, or somebody do something that one of your pet peeves while the word is going on, that distraction. We have to learn how to get the distractions out the way, because many times when the distraction comes, it's not by mistake that the distraction comes when something is said that really needs to help you get delivered or healed or move forward in that area. How many times I have done? How many times when somebody said, "Well, I told you that you need to let me use myself and my wife." My wife would say, I told you to pick up such and such." I'm like, "I didn't hear you say that." So, "Well, I told you." I said, "You did?" I wasn't listening. As we said, I wasn't an active listener. And then if she said it and I didn't hear it, even though as the one being the messenger, to make sure that we repeat, because guess what? It's the smallest devices that have us all crazy and all upset. Because anybody that knows me, when I go shopping, it could be 4 things, and those 4 things will be on a sheet of paper or on my phone. Because once I go in and come out, I ain't coming right back no hour later when I was just there. Y'all gonna have to do all that with certain things. Now, if I forget something important like deodorant and stuff, I'm going back in here. Because we ain't waiting till tomorrow, but there's certain things I'm not trying to go back in there if you forgot to tell me. So we have to understand those things. But that's me. We have to be clear. We got to make sure that we communicate. Understand this. Listen to what a device is. A device is a plan, method, or trick with a particular aim. Understand the devil, what the devil does is he sets devices and traps, and he's very meticulous, very systematic in what he does. So to eliminate misunderstanding, to eliminate confusion, we have to make sure that we communicate better. Now, in communicating better, it goes both ways. Because sometimes, as I said before we begin this lesson, you're always communicating. Many people say, well, some such don't communicate. That is not true. There's times where we're poor communicators, we're good and good, but we're always communicating. There's sometimes people are not communicating verbally, but they're communicating nonverbal. There's times they're communicating through their behavior. We're always communicating. So we have to understand it. So you have to understand that's one of the ways the devil tried to sneak in with lack of communication. How have you felt when you was left out of something or somebody didn't communicate when there was a time change? Let's say you're going somewhere. Let's say you invited to a birthday dinner. Supposed to start at 7, but the time will change to 8. Nobody tells you, and you get there and you don't see anybody you know. Aren't you a little frustrated, a little mad? Like, hey, why didn't they tell me the time change? They didn't communicate that. You feel a certain type of way. Same way, we have to be careful because we need to make sure that we communicate, that people know what's going on. Because conflict can arise from poor communication. It has messed up relationships, friendship over poor communication. And we have to learn to get rid of the noise. To get rid of the noise, you have to practice making sure your conversation. Now, with certain people, your conversations need to be short, quick, and to the point. Because certain people don't listen, or I don't say listen. They don't receive when it's going around the barn. They don't get all the fluff. Some people you got to say, hey, no, I can't come. There's times where you have to be direct and to the point. Now, listen to this. This is very important. I'm learning this too. We can't keep on avoiding and putting off conversations and communication that needs to happen. We can't. We keep sweeping stuff underneath the rug. We say, I'll talk about it. I'll deal with that issue next year. I deal with that. We can't keep off putting conversations and having communication and talking to people that needs to be done. We have to pray about it. Say, Lord, I need to have this conversation. I need to address this issue. We can't keep putting it off. Now, listen to this. This is what happens when we put it off. Avoidance is the best short-term strategy to escape conflict and the best long-term strategy to ensure suffering. I'll read it again. Avoidance is the best short-term strategy to escape conflict and the best long-term strategy to ensure suffering. There are some conversations that's going to be hard for us to have with family, with friends, with spouses, co-workers, church folk, and things of that nature. But we have to come to the point where we pray about it. We ask the Lord to lead us and guide us, and we got to have the conversation. Now, what's going to happen is this. Some people disagree with this. I just like the saying. One person said, apology accepted, access denied. There's sometimes where it might not get back to the original state that it's in. But at the same time, a conversation needs to be had. And the conversation needs to be had on a mature level, on a responsible level. Because at the end of the day, I believe none of us want to be at the point where we're hurting, where we're breaking, where we're frustrated. You might not get the result. You might not get the resolution that you thought you're going to get, but at least I did not keep avoiding the situation. I put on my big boy pants, put on my big boy pants. I'm about to say the other thing, like, put on big girl drawers. No, put on my big boy pants and let's deal with the situation. And sometimes we have to agree to disagree. Y'all leave me alone. Sometimes we got to agree to disagree. Y'all are very nice on this side tonight. These ones on this side, they are something. We switched. So understand that. Understand it. So let me move on to this. We dealt with last week the lines of communication, and we got to understand this. Listen to this. There's a if they could put on there the lines of communication diagram, we're going to go over that briefly. When the lines of communication, we have to understand that certainly the line of communication from a speaker to a listener is very significant, but there are others. We have to understand that the Lord has direct access to the listener too. Listeners hear from the Lord as they prepare their hearts for worship, practice spiritual disciplines, and interact with others during the week. What we have to make sure is this. What happens on Sundays and Wednesdays, those days that we're not here, we ought to be preparing ourselves. In other words, we have to make sure that when we come into the house of the Lord, we're in the right frame of mind. And this is a place where we hope that we don't have a lot of distractions. We don't expect to have the same distraction at a local assembly that you have at work, that you have with the family. Because you come to the place of refuge, you come to the local assembly to help unload the burden, unload the distraction. But sometimes you go to some places and it seems like, why should I even came? Because there's more distraction here at the local assembly than it was at the job. So we have to understand is that we have to make sure that we keep the lines of communication open because, Lord, for the things I am dealing with in my life, I need you to speak to me. The Bible said we have to learn not to lean to our own understanding. In all our ways, acknowledge him. And we have to understand the Lord is not going to yell at us like we yell at some folk. There's times he's going to speak in a small, still voice. There's sometimes he's going to speak what you need to hear through somebody else. There's been times where it has not been a Bible verse attached to what somebody said to me, but when somebody said something to me, it stayed and resonated with me because when it was spoken and when it was said. And a lot of times we're concentrate so much, on the messenger that we miss the message. And we have to remember that. So you have to understand when the Lord speaks, the Lord can speak to the speaker and the speaker shares it with the listener, but also the Lord can speak directly to the listener. And what we have to remember is during the week and all times that we're not together, we ought to be preparing ourselves to hear from the Lord. Because there are some things that we are all dealing with is, Lord, I need your help and your guidance. I don't want to make the wrong steps. I don't want to be doing like the children of Israel, wandering in circles and things of that nature, when I can stop, pray, Lord, direct my steps, guide my steps, so I'm not repeating this vicious cycle. I told you for years, I'm one of those honest preachers. For years, I'll make a decision and say, Lord, bless my decision. I've already made it. And no, and then if it goes wrong, then I'm mad. No, I should have stopped, listened to the different times I made a decision, jumped out there too fast, made a decision, did it, got it handled. And 2 to 3 days later, a way was made. But I already decided to make a way, and the way the Lord made was a better opportunity for me. But I moved too fast. I was impatient. So we have to understand that, listen, listeners hear from the Lord as they prepare their hearts for worship, practice spiritual disciplines, and interact with others during the week. During the worship experience and the sermon, God speaks to the listener as they pray, read, worship, and pray. One thing that's very important when you come to worship, as I said before, when you come to worship, you want to make sure if you come to rehab or to a Bible study, to a Sunday worship experience, if you thought it enough to give it your presence, think it enough to give it your attention. That even though when we come, and I had to learn it the hard way, we come, I don't feel like being here. I got this to do, that to do. But that time that you have given to the Lord, try to make it personal. Try to get all the distractions, all the noise away, because that is the day or the moment the Lord can heal you. The Lord can deliver you. The Lord can make ways, but we have to make sure that we get the distractions out of the way and have an open line of communication through your praise, through your worship, through the word. And that's what we have to learn, how to get the distractions and the noise out the way. Because how many times have you been distracted and you missed what the Lord had for you because you was doing something foolish? I'm not talking why, but you have to be, because you have to understand when a word is said at a certain time and how your heart is, you have received it there. Because it don't take much for the Lord to move for you to convict, but you have to be careful because there's times I have learned the lesson naturally and spiritually. It didn't take all day for the lesson, but it was at that moment when my heart was open. I was not in a vulnerable place, but a place of learning, and I wanted to receive. I wanted to change, and instantly the Lord spoke, and this is how you do. And it made sense. It convicted and it changed me because while I was open and I wanted change. That's why we got to keep the lines of communication open with the Lord. Giving yourself totally to the worship experience is very important. Why? Because if you look at it, the average church now, you're there an hour, hour and a half, no more than 2 hours. So if you're there 2 hours on Sunday, an hour, hour and a half on Wednesday, you're going to give the Lord maybe 3.5, 4 hours. And those 3.5, 4 hours, we could not give whatever was going on with the lesson, with the worship, our undivided attention. This is a time that's been set aside for us to get what we need from the Lord. Because trust me, the way life is pulling on us, and all the things that's going on, a time to Relax, not relax. The time to let go and release the burdens is very important. You have from the paying of the bills, from the co-workers to the spouses to the children to the bills. We got so much going on. And a moment that I can get into his presence, a moment where I can and relax and just worship and thank him for what he's done. And then I come in with the wrong mindset, or I come in and communicated poorly. And now that hour and a half, I'm not even there. I'm upset. I'm mad. Why? When that time has been given out to the Lord. So we got to make sure we keep the lines of communication open. Let me jump down to something else. I'm going to jump into this. We also have to learn how to clear the fog. We have a lot of fog in our mind, a lot of fog. And fog is a state of confusion or bewilderment, something that confuses or obscures. Fog. Have you ever tried to drive on a foggy morning? How that makes you feel? It makes me feel uncomfortable because I really can't see as far ahead as I would like to. And that happens a lot of times in our mind where things are foggy, where we have so much going on in our mind and in our brain. Sometimes our brain has too many tabs open. Have you had tabs open on a computer? Where you're working on this, you leave that open, you're working on that, leaving that open. There's been times with all the things I work on, I can have 8 or 9 tabs open. I just go back up and click. Sometimes our brain is doing the same thing. We got too many tabs open, too much stuff going on in there. And guess what happens? Something is said, something communicated, and you're having the famous quote, like I said, I heard you talking, but I really wasn't listening. That happened because I got too many tabs open. I got too many things going on. But we have to learn how to prioritize what's going on in our life. Because a lot of times people think multitasking is great. It is great, but everything is not getting 100% of your attention. And what's going to really hurt you is that time you need to talk to somebody, that time that person spent time to open up to you, say, we need to talk, and that conversation is full of noise. That conversation got a lot of fog. We don't want that. We don't want that. We must learn and practice clearing the fog when we communicate. Noise is not the only communication barrier. Fog is. It's one thing for a preacher, speaker, somebody to speak for you to understand biblical truth, but it's another to communicate it clear. We have to learn how to communicate clear. Learn how to be clear and direct to the point. And if somebody's offended, we apologize, but I'm learning that we can't. And those that help me, please, those that help me say, hey, get to it. I'm not now, not now, because I'm almost done. I'm talking about in conversation. I can do a bit of talking. Y'all don't have to all say amen at one time. I say amen for myself. But at the same time, is I don't want to talk so much that when we get done, have you ever talked with somebody so long you get done with it, about what were we talking about? Because we done went to too many tabs all over the place. I want to get it done. Now, if we have brought a conclusion to what the topic was, going out to eat or something, and we start just talking about other stuff, but the crust of the conversation is done, that's cool. But there's times where there's no need to talk in 30 minutes if we still have no resolution. I've been in plenty of meetings and you're like, okay, what were we talking about? I'm not one, I don't do well with that, because while we have this time is very valuable to us. Time is very valuable. So let me get back to, if there's fog in the pulpit, there will not be clarity in the pews. We have to understand that anyone that's speaking, we're not just talking about on Sunday morning. We're also talking about when somebody is, and I'll be ending soon, I see the time. When somebody, let's just say if somebody's having a meeting with the ushers, you don't want fog in that meeting. Somebody's meeting with the ministers, or somebody meeting with the youth team. You don't want the person sharing the message as lost as, you know what? You want to make sure that when you communicate, it's clear. No distractions. There's no fog. That people know what you're talking about and what you're expecting. Listen to the word of those, for God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. Have you met those people? Anytime they get involved, everything is lost, unorganized, jacked up. Well, if you want people to join, want people to be a part, you got to get rid of the distraction and the noise. You got to make sure that, as they said in drumline, one band, one sound. How am I going to get one sound out of you and all of us playing different music? Your music sheet is different from mine. We all got to get on the same page so we can move forward. The Bible says let all things be done decently and in order. You know how many times people have missed their blessing, have representation have been poor because of stuff wasn't done in order? You spend half the time fussing about it not being in order versus, hey, why are we here? So you got to make sure when you plan, you organize, you got to make sure there's order in the things that we do. Now listen to this. Many of us, this quote applies to many of us, so I'm going to end here. Many of us, this happens to me, and I learned this. Due to intense brain fog, all of my thoughts have been grounded until further notice. Many times what happens with us is we're going to have to learn that when things are foggy, things are cloudy, we got so much going on, we have to learn how to bring order and stability to our mind. Because the last thing I want is be spilling over on you something that you had nothing to do with. What is it saying? You don't heal what you hurt. You will bleed on people that didn't cut you. Same thing for us is that when we communicate, there's been a lot of times I'll try my best. One of the pet peeves of my communication, I do not like when people volunteer information that person really didn't need to know. Have you ever talked to somebody? Yeah, I'm going to use this as an example. Sister Watermelon, y'all saw her the other day. Yeah, she was doing okay, but her and her husband ain't doing well. I didn't ask you for that. But they volunteer that information where you're adding more fog, you're adding more distraction, where I'm learning to be direct to the point and clear. Not volunteering information that does not help, that does not build up, that's condemning. We have to understand it. So we have to understand is that we're going to have to, if we're too foggy, there's too much going on. There's nothing wrong with telling somebody, hey, we need to talk about this later. When you can be attentive, when you can be an active listener. So we have to understand that. So what we're going to do, we're going to end there. Don't want to go too long. But as we said, next week, we're going to finish up on this series. But what's very important, as we talked about this week, we have to make sure we get the distractions out the way. I'm one of those people, and I can be honest with you. My children and my wife don't like watching movies with me because I will rewind it back. Because if I miss one word, I sure enough will. Because I'm one of those people, I don't want to miss anything. What do you say? I'm trying to figure out the plot. I'm trying to get the things done, and they still talking. And rewind it back. I think on whatever day that was, Sunday, Monday, boy, it took us like an extra 50% to get through the movie. I missed that. Send it back. You know what was going on? There you go. Wasn't paying attention, talking, like going on. I was a distraction. So we have to learn to get the distraction out the way. Yeah, it is so. We have to learn how to clear the fog. Remember this tonight. Close some of the tabs in your mind. If I come to you, somebody come. Let's not use me, because if I come to some of y'all be like, I don't want to talk to you. But those people that come to you that tells you, hey, I need to talk. Have you ever talked to somebody, hold a conversation with somebody that looked like their body language, the nonverbal, you can tell they ain't paying attention. You can tell they don't care. You know how that makes you feel? And they said in the beginning, we need to talk. And they like, yeah. I'd rather not even talk. Just let it be me and Jesus, because you're not listening. It's very important. So please let us remember that. Please let us remember. We have to get the distractions out the way when we communicate. Have to get the distractions out the way. You have to. And we have to learn how to clear the fog. You need it to be clear. They sing the song, I can see clearly now that the rain is gone. We should be saying, I can hear clearly now that the fog has been. I need you to understand. I need you to hear me. Because when I get done with the conversation, I just don't want you to hear me. I need you to understand and feel where I'm coming from. I need you to understand that what I share with you is very important and I need help. Because a lot of times, some people don't want to hear the solution. They just want to unload. They just want somebody to understand, somebody to really vent to. And then sometimes people really want a solution. Can we go ahead and put our hands together and give the Lord a hand praise? Thank you. We're going to wrap up this lesson next week with a review and going over some other things. But please remember, we have to get the distractions out the way when we talk. This is what I said before, and it really shocks me. This is no offense to anybody, but it's amazing when let's say two people are dating, and time goes on 2, 3, 4 years down the road, and they say, well, I didn't know such and such about them. I didn't know such and such about them. But what were y'all talking about? All them times of riding in the car and at the table, going to the movies, walking in the park. Was everybody on the phone, but were y'all having some real conversation? Were y'all saying, hey, we need to talk? And that's how you know people, by taking time to talk, by taking time to share. You'd be surprised how there's times where siblings don't even know each other's siblings' favorite color or favorite food, things of that nature. Same thing with spouses and things of that nature. We have to take time to talk about behavior. You have to take time to talk. So we thank you. We thank you. Those who join us through Facebook Live and YouTube, we thank you. If you have not, we ask that you please sow seed into the kingdom of the Lord. We have multiple ways you can give. You can give through Cash App. You can also go to our website, rndministries.org, and go to the donate page. And there you can get Cash App name, and you can also give through PayPal. So thank you for those that give. We really appreciate big, small, great, large. It all will bless us as we move forward for the mission. Thank you for joining us. Please tune in. Please remember, on this Sunday, R&D Ministries, our morning service now starts at 9 a.m., not at 8:30, 9 a.m. It is First Sunday, and it is Pentecost Sunday, so we will be serving communion. So please, please, let's come enjoy ourselves in the Lord. As you know, we won't be here all day. That's not even how we roll, but please, let's take time out, virtually or in person, to celebrate the Lord. Let's give the Lord one more hand praise in the name of the Lord. Amen.